Hey Brainiacs, how you guys doing today? I'm Cam's Brain, and I'd like to thank you for tuning in to another episode of My Humble Opinion. If you guys are new here, we've been talking about a book called The 48 Laws of Power by an author named Robert Greene. Some people don't like the 48 Laws of Power. Some people do like the 48 Laws of Power. Some people feel like it's a book of manipulation. Some people feel like it's not. For me, I feel like it's very important to learn about this book because a lot of people use it. As I always say, whether it's a book of manipulation or not, the reality of it is it's used quite often. So even if you're reading this book so that you can learn how to react towards people who may be trying to use it against you, it's always going to be a good thing to know. So we're going to be tackling the 22nd law of power, which is use the surrender tactic, transform weakness into power. So again, I don't think this is manipulative. I think it's very important. And for me, I try to use this in somewhat of like a positive approach every time I read one of these laws of power. And positively, how I would look at this is know when to give up, know when to say no. We kind of talked about this in the previous podcast where it's like sometimes you have to make sure you're not agreeing with a lot of people. Make sure that you're not co-signing the wrong thing. And this kind of is the same situation. Sometimes you have to know when to be weak. Sometimes you have to know when you're not okay. We try to break this down, or I try to break this down, as I always do in each episode, in 3 different ways. We try to figure out how this can help us in our business, in our relationships, and in our spiritual relationships with whatever higher power we believe in. So for me, if I take this parable or if I take this law of power and I look at it in a sense of knowing when to give up, knowing when to surrender to gain power, the reality of the situation is sometimes you have to be able to pull back when you're around somebody that may know more than you. So for instance, in business, right? If I'm using this parable in a business sense, if I am dealing with a customer, or if I'm dealing with another company that knows more than me that I can learn from, I'm going to surrender to whatever it is they have to say so that I can learn a little bit more and become a little bit more powerful after I learn something. A lot of people look at weakness as, a bad thing. It's not always a bad thing if you are aware. A big part of life is being alert, aware, and attentive. My wife always says this to our kids. And the reality of the situation is a lot of things that people deem negative can always be a positive thing if you are aware that you need growth in that negative aspect. So for instance, if I'm dealing with a business or if I'm dealing with a customer and I am selling cameras, but this company has a more superior product than I do, or this company knows how to talk to their customers a little bit better than I may, I need to learn how to be quiet, listen to their sales pitch, and be able, when I'm ready to talk to a customer, use the sales pitch that that company may use in order to become a little bit more powerful, in order to know my audience and know my customer. So that's a very small indication, but a very important thing that you can take with you as an example. When in business, you should probably just kind of lay low, learn something from somebody else. That way you can get a little bit stronger. And you can use that technique in literally everything and whatever it is you're doing. I used to buy products to see where the flaws were so that whenever I made it, I basically improved on what I felt like wasn't good enough. So in business, that's a good way of using this law of power. In a personal relationship, I kind of feel like it's a situation of knowing when to not always argue, right? Like there's a saying, know when to choose your battles, especially in a relationship, and you don't want to have a combative nature or a combative situation. Sometimes it's important to know when to shut up and when it's not worth arguing. A lot of times I find whenever I kind of take a beat and I don't say anything immediately during an argument, a lot of stuff tends to simmer down quickly because both parties, me and my wife, or me or my friend or whoever I'm talking to, we have enough time to kind of replay what happened and replay what we may have done wrong or replay what could be better in the future. So in a relationship, surrendering so that you could be powerful is important. And I don't think it's a manipulative thing. I'm going to surrender to what somebody may feel like hurt them that I've done so that I can be a little bit more powerful the next time I have a conversation or interaction with the person, and make sure that I'm doing something that they will be receptive to. I'm doing something that won't offend them. So in a relationship, I think the parable speaks to just knowing when to pick your battles and just knowing when to shut up, knowing when it's not worth the argument, knowing when it's not worth trying to prove that you're right or that you're wrong. One thing I find a lot of times in arguments, you're not always necessarily even mad at the person you're arguing with. You're mad at the situation. So if you take the person out of the situation and you just figure out how you can not put yourself in that situation again with communication and with proper steps moving forward, then that's all it really takes. The more and more you blame somebody for a situation, opposed to blaming the situation and how things can be done better, the worse situations get, the worse relationships get. So I think it's important, especially in a relationship, when you're upset. It's okay to be weak. It's okay to not argue. It's okay to just let stuff fly by and revisit it when everybody is calm. One thing I learned, especially as a parent, I met a guy before I had my daughter, and he said, I'll give you one piece of advice. He said, never discipline your kids when you're upset. He said, when you discipline your kids when you're upset, you're always going to be coming from obviously a place of anger. And if you're disciplining somebody and you want them to learn, you have to come from a place of love, of peace, and of understanding. And I took that not only with my parenting, but in my personal relationship. And I think this is kind of saying the same thing, like knowing to be weak, because that's kind of weakness, right? Like if you know you want to be this big, brash, upset individual, you have to kind of allow yourself to be meek and calm down a little bit so that you can make sure your voice is inflecting the right way, make sure that your delivery is coming off in a positive way. That's showing weakness so that your relationship can be more powerful and so that you can gain a little bit more moving forward when these instances occur. Now, in a spiritual sense, I think it's always great to be weak, especially with your higher power. It's always good to express what you need, where you need help with, read whatever Bible you read or whatever book you read that is part of your religion in order to become a stronger individual. Weakness builds the strongest people, especially when you're alert, aware, and attentive of what you need to change and what you want to change. I say to my girls all the time, church is for sinners, right? Religion is for people who are trying to find a higher purpose. Religion typically is for people who understand that there's something greater and bigger than themselves. So the concept of being weak in order to become stronger is everything in a religious sense, because it's all about allowing yourself to be a vessel for whatever it is you believe in. And if that's not the biggest form of weakness, I don't know what is. But you guys let me know how you feel about this. Please comment down below. Let me know if you agree with these statements, if you don't agree with these statements, if you feel like it's a manipulative statement or if it's not a manipulative statement. Let's all get involved. I appreciate you guys for tuning in to another episode of My Humble Opinion. I am Cam's Brain, and I will see you next time. Peace. Going on. Hey, all work, no pleasure.